Good afternoon. I am Eileen Fleischman, Vice Dean for Alumni at the University at Buffalo School of Law. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's program, Pathways to Equity in Legal Education and the Profession. We are very fortunate to have as our moderator, Professor Tolu Odunsi. She is uniquely qualified for this role, as she was UB Law School's first Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. She is also a full-time faculty member teaching legal analysis, research, and writing. A former president of the Minority Bar Association of Western New York, she has authored several insightful articles on racial justice. I now turn the program over to Professor Odunsi.
Thank you, Eileen, for such a warm and wonderful introduction. Welcome, everyone, and thank you to our hosts for co-hosting with the University at Buffalo School of Law. First, I want to thank the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission, the City University of New York School of Law, St. John's University School of Law, and Syracuse University School of Law. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge the difficult week that it has been in this country, and just take 10 seconds for a moment of silence for the lives that have been unnecessarily lost at the hands of the police, and then also to recognize those lives lost recently in a mass shooting in Indianapolis, and also the other mass shootings that we've experienced recently. So let's just take 10 seconds for that. Okay, thank you all just for observing that moment. A couple housekeeping things before our presentation gets started. We want our participants to know that you can use the Q&A feature on Zoom to submit questions. We will also be accommodating those who may not be able to use the Q&A feature, and you can use the raise your hand feature. And hopefully we'll be able to get to folks. If you use the raise your hand feature, we will unmute you to ask your question. But if you can use the Q&A feature, please utilize that, as we will have a Q&A portion of the program at the end. Okay, so we are fortunate enough to have some opening remarks from our Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul, and she has sent us a welcome via a video. So why don't we get started by playing those remarks.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, and I want to thank the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission for the opportunity to address today's important discussion on pathways to equity in the legal profession and in education. I also want to thank today's co-hosts, the City University of New York School of Law, St. John's University School of Law, Syracuse University College of Law, and the University at Buffalo School of Law. As we begin this important conversation, let us take inspiration from the namesake of this commission, Franklin H. Williams, who fought for racial and social justice, from ending school desegregation to including Black Americans on juries. I'm moved by his words that the creation of an atmosphere without even the appearance of racial bias must be the prime objective of our courts. We should not open the wound unless we're prepared to heal it. The Commission's work and events like this move us closer to a more just legal system and honor the legacy of Franklin Williams. Diversity in the legal profession is essential. Not only does it offer more perspectives that lead to innovative solutions, it also ensures that all viewpoints are fairly represented. And as a question of fairness, the profession should more accurately represent the actual racial composition of our country. Sadly, right now, though, disparity still exists at every level, from law schools to courtrooms to law firms and within the true corridors of power, whether in the corporate realm or in politics. Beginning in law school, which is hard enough, we know that students of color face obstacles, sometimes made to feel unwelcome or they don't belong in the classroom. Any form of discrimination in our law schools is not only swiftly condemned, but it must be rectified. But this disparity continues well beyond law school. In 2016, approximately a little more than a third of first-year associates were people of color. It's even lower for Black and Latinx attorneys, who make up only 5% of that figure. And women are still only 1 in 3 lawyers. We know that the lack of diversity in law schools and the legal profession stems from systemic issues of racism and economics and disparities in education. And I would say also perhaps a lack of exposure. There's a phrase we use to encourage girls to enter male-dominated fields like STEM. You have to see it to be it. How? Have more female math and science teachers. Create opportunities for female engineers and tech executives to meet young girls. Role models at a young age can make a profound difference. But extrapolating this to create more diversity in the law, we first have to ask, how many Black and brown children come in contact with a family member or neighbor who's working in the legal profession? How many teachers and guidance counselors encourage children in these communities to think about legal opportunities? That is our first hurdle to overcome. They need to see it to be it, and we can't afford to lose any more time. Right now, young people of color are thinking about what they want to do with their lives. And there's no question that they're influenced by the news of the times we live in. Whether it was the George Floyd murder or an unjust criminal justice system that has brought forth a national reckoning that yes, Black lives do indeed matter, or the harsh racial disparities in health outcomes from COVID-19 and overall lower vaccination rates, and why such profound differences exist between communities of color and white communities. Truly, the concept of racial justice in every facet of American life is on trial in this country, and it cries out for a just verdict. I look at these current events as a confluence of experiences that impressionable young people are witnessing. Just as I was a child in 1968, my career choice was definitely influenced seeing news reports of war protests, campus demonstration, and the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And a few years later, watching the Watergate hearings gavel to gavel drew me toward a career in public service on Capitol Hill. With this personal knowledge of the impact of early influences, I do feel more optimistic that this racial and social justice awakening in our country will inspire more young people of color to become engaged activists, and many will realize that the law, properly wielded, can be the sharpest sword in the fight for true equality and justice. That's why today's discussion on pipeline programs and their role in cultivating students' careers is so necessary. From elementary school to college, pipeline programs knock down barriers and support underrepresented students on their path into the legal profession. But while gaps continue to exist, there's work we need to do to strengthen these programs and influence their opportunities. Role models are needed now more than ever, and pipeline programs should boost mentors who can spark the interest of students to begin the long journey toward the law. We also need pipeline programs that are geared not just toward boosting representation in big law, but in social justice, immigrant justice, environmental justice, and countless areas where lawyers can change society and better people's lives. So how will we know what success looks like? When people of color in the legal profession represent the equal proportion to the larger population. That's what today is all about, creating a more just society. And I know that Franklin Williams would expect no less from us. Thank you.
What wonderful remarks from our Lieutenant Governor. At this time, we will hear some introductory remarks from the Franklin H. Williams Commission, and these remarks will come from the Honorable Shirley Troutman and the Honorable Troy K. Weber.
Good afternoon. I am Troy K. Weber, co-chair of the Franklin H. Williams Commission and also Associate Justice of the Appellate Division, First Department. I want to thank you all for being a part of this program. Hopefully we'll be able to come up with concrete ideas as to how students of color can be better prepared for law school and beyond. As you may be aware, the Williams Commission was established to eradicate systemic racism in the court system by taking affirmative steps to address and eliminate barriers to racial and ethnic fairness in the courts. and to increasing racial and ethnic group representation in all levels of the court system. We do this through an examination and review of current practices. We also recommend measures to enhance racial and ethnic diversity in the court staff and professionals in the legal community. One of the goals of this program is to come up with ideas to increase the number of attorneys of color. Obviously, admittance into law school is only half the battle. We must ensure that law school students do well and that they do, in fact, remain in law school. Students must be encouraged to seek help from their peers, and law school professors must be encouraged to assist the students. Law school should not be a Darwinian experience. It is not survival of the fittest. There should be more of a holistic approach. I do note that more law schools are offering wellness classes, meditation classes, and more classes to really adhere to and encourage the students to understand what it is all about. Also, I believe that student associations, as well as bar associations and entities such as the Williams Commission, should play a role in assisting students, perhaps forming more partnerships with the law schools. It is important that we ensure that there's a pool of attorneys of color, that whether they become a part of the court system, become judges, become law professors, become associates at law firms, or whatever legal position they seek. And while there have been advances in the number of attorneys of color in the court system and the legal profession as a whole, the numbers are now decreasing. We are lagging in the number of court attorneys, referee, and hearing officers within the court system. We are currently also lagging in the number of judges of color. This was borne out not only by Secretary Johnson's report, but also statistics maintained by the Commission, as well as a report by the Judicial Friends. The number of Latino and Asian judges are also troubling. So clearly, the lack of a pool of attorneys of color creates a rippling effect. A glaring example is that the number of Black male judges and the available pool of Black male attorneys for appointment or election as a judge has decreased significantly. Unfortunately, this is an indicator of the fact that the number of Black males attending law school has also decreased significantly. In conversations with law students, including my daughter who graduated law school in 2019, there are far more women of color than males of color, particularly Black males in law school. I do not know the reason for this, and hopefully members of the panel will be able to share any opinions they have on this issue. So again, it is important that we figure out ways in which not only to encourage individuals of color to attend law school, but also to ensure that they are successful in law school and beyond. And we come up with ideas in which to assist them in doing so. Thank you again for attending.
Good afternoon. I'm Justice Shirley Troutman, co-chair of the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission and Associate Justice of the Appellate Division, 4th Department. Today's program is focused on the next generation of the legal profession, which the Commission believes should be diverse and inclusive. Moreover, I submit that it is only when we have a profession that is representative of our society that people of color will believe that the words equal justice under the law inscribed on the United States Supreme Court applies to all citizens of the United States. As the Commission moves forward, we are committed today, as we were 30 years ago, when we became a permanent part of the unified court system, to undertake measures that will help eradicate systemic racism in the legal system. Thus, we have developed an operational plan to firmly address the issue of systemic racism in the New York State courts and its effects on communities of color. The plan includes continued diversity and advocacy efforts, educating the profession and public regarding the harm racism has on the fair administration of justice and the importance of cultural sensitivity, working on appropriate legislative measures, partnering with educational institutions, bar associations, and others to increase diversity on the bench and in the legal profession. Speaking up for those who are adversely impacted by the effects of systemic racism, working to ensure that underrepresented groups are made aware of career opportunities in the courts and that they are prepared to take advantage of same. undertake efforts to encourage participation by people of color on juries. The items that I just spoke of are but a few efforts that we are undertaking to address systemic racism and racial equity. However, I do wish to emphasize the fact that each of you, upon graduating and passing the bar, have a central role to play in the Commission's future efforts. As we continue our work in addressing the age-old issue of race, I firmly believe that by undertaking the measures I just discussed, that our nation has the opportunity to live up to its promise to truly be one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Once again, such important words from the co-chairs of the Franklin H. Williams Commission. Before we get to our panelists for the day, I do want to mention that many of our panelists and presenters have prepared materials related to this presentation, and those can be found on the registration page for this program where you registered. So please note that those materials are there. And now we will get to our first live presentation, which will be conducted by Ashley Bernal. She is a PhD. She is a professor of sociology at York College and the City University of New York. She's also a researcher for the New York City Bar Association's 2020 report. And she prepared and is the author of The Diversity Gap, Black and Latinx Representation Disparities and the Legal Profession. So without further ado, we will have Ashley present.
Good afternoon, I'm Ashley. I am going to start, you won't be able to see me, you will only hear my voice, but I have a quick presentation on the actual report and the recommendations that I made for the New York City Bar and all stakeholders involved in making sure that Black and Latinx law students are successful in completing law programs. So just give me 1 second. The diversity gap, right? Black and, let me move this to the side. Black and Latinx representation in the legal pipeline. So 1.5%. 1.5% is the number of Black and Latinx students or practicing attorneys that actually made it through the entire pipeline, meaning that there were 5 of 328 Black and Latinx respondents who participated in the legal pipeline, starting from middle school and continuing to law school, who traditionally participated in the entire pipeline. That was a disaster when we found that, because the idea of pipelines are that you begin in middle school and you are pipelined through each different portion of your educational trajectory until you reach your desired outcome. But what is a pipeline? So a pipeline program are programs that are designed to support students who are typically from underrepresented populations, and they offer educational and occupational support to get them through each phase of development and pursuing whatever career. And so with the task force, before I came on at the bar, the task force who was created by the New York City Bar to target the leaks, what they determined were leaks in the pipeline, because we saw that research shows that pipeline programs actually are very effective in making sure or supporting students through their occupational story. And so the pipeline task force decided to see what was the biggest leak that they needed to focus on to try to lessen the disparity. And so what they found was that of all racial minority groups, not only were Black and Latinx underrepresented, but they were actually leaking through the pipeline. And I keep saying leaking because they were leaving, either pursuing a career in law and leaving, or even when they got to practice as an attorney, they were abandoning the field. So this is why the task force decided, okay, we need to see how can we stop these leaks? How can we better support Black and Latinx students to make them make sure that they are successful in becoming attorneys. So some of the key findings I did over 6 months, we developed a survey in addition to in-depth interviews to just kind of get an overview of what was going on in the legal profession today. So we capped it off at 10 years. So if you had graduated from law school within the past 10 years, we sent out a survey to all of the 15 law schools and several different legal networks. And so we had almost 1,000 responses, but because we cut off at the 10-year mark, that excluded quite a few. So we ended up with 675 respondents for the survey. And of those 675, only 111 had actually participated in a pipeline program. And so in terms of Black and Latinx representation, there were about 285 respondents. And of those respondents, 85% said that they didn't even know what a pipeline program was. So again, that was very startling. We said, okay, this is an issue. So then even further, 86% of all respondents, not just the interview respondents, but the people who actually responded to the survey, 86% of law school students or practicing attorneys had not attended or even knew what a pipeline program was. So what did I find? I found 3 major aspects into understanding and better supporting Black and Latinx students, and also pipeline program directors, law schools, and the New York City Bar. What do we need to know about better supporting Black and Latinx students through the pipeline, not just participating in law school, but actually pulling and recruiting more students into the pipeline. So the first section I'm going to present will be what programs are getting right, because that is important. We don't want to just say, okay, this is wrong, this is wrong. What are we actually doing right? Or what are the programs getting right from the perspectives of the students and attorneys? So then the second part will be the barriers to pipelines. What are the barriers? What are the roadblocks that are prohibiting students from participating in pipelines? And the last are the pipeline gaps. What are the actual programs? What are they? I don't want to say missing because that's too heavy. We didn't find anything that the pipeline programs were doing wrong, but what are the gaps that are causing these leaks for Black and Latinx students, externally and both internally? So the first aspects are, what are the programs getting right? It was of the people who participated in pipeline programs, through the survey, we found that the areas of concentration, well, first of all, no one complained about anything about the pipeline. As they stand, the over 50 programs that are available in the New York area, no one complained about them. They were like, okay, no, these pipeline programs are great. How can we have more? But when we looked at to do an evaluation of what they were offering, the most valuable area they found was academic support and law school prep. I'm going to talk a little bit more about law school prep because that came up the most across survey respondents in addition to interview participants. So the barriers. Now we're going to get to the actual what can be done, or what did we find that was contributing to, I don't want to say cause, but contributing to the leaks in these pipelines. So we found that it was program visibility, financial support, and public interest resource support. So I'm going to provide a couple of quotes directly from the participants and talk a little bit about what that meant in the context of barriers to pipeline programs. So program visibility. I didn't know pipelines were a thing until I participated in this study. I participated to see what they were. And this was just from one of the open-ended questions on the survey. And so, as I stated earlier, when you saw from the graph, there were 85% of Black and Latinx students who are participants who were not aware that pipelines existed, right? And so even the ones who did participate, they were finding that they had to search the internet. So it's 36% of actual pipeline participants said that, or reported that they only knew about pipeline programs through random internet searches. So this kind of led us or implied that pipeline programs need to be more visible. They need to actively recruit more, go to especially schools in New York City. There's so many schools, and many of the students who actually are from New York or the New York State area said that their schools were not actively, from middle, high school, college, they were not actively recruiting or making it known that pipeline programs were available. And they also mentioned that they would have loved to participate. Now that they knew what they were like, okay, I really wish I would have could have used that. And those who participated later on in their educational trajectory, they said that they wish that they would have had those resources earlier in their path to becoming an attorney. So the second portion, the second key barrier was the financial support. Law school is a lot of money. Before you even start, you have to pay for LSAT, LSAT prep courses, application fees, credentialing services. So this was actually from a current law student. And so a lot of the respondents reported that not only is it expensive to pursue a career in law, but once you actually get into law school, sometimes the financial burden becomes overwhelming or unbearable. And so even though these are the best case scenarios, because we were our population were, of course, the successful students and attorneys, they still voiced that they know of others who would just forego pursuing law because they didn't feel like it was worth it because of the financial burden of actually going to law school. And even if they made it to law school, all of these, hidden costs of pursuing or making it to the next level, especially when it came down to the bar prep courses, and even the disparity of having access to big law firms and how big law firms actually supplement the cost of bar prep versus other students who were going to public interest. And I'm going to get into that in 1 second. So that leads to the public interest resource support. This was, let me read the quote. I have to give back. We need people in the courtroom who look like me. So I interviewed 26 current law students and practicing attorneys. And this was one of the biggest issues because half of the interviewees actually were either pursuing their legal career in public interest, or they were actively working in public interest. And so one of the things that, because I'm not an attorney, I'm just a researcher, so I was coming in kind of, I don't want to say blind, but I was letting things emerge. And so what I found that every participant in some way, shape, or form, because they identified as Black, as they identified as Black or Latinx, they felt this need to give back because they knew that they were underrepresented population. They wanted to make sure that they weren't just taking up space in a profession that has not always been open to their community. And so they identified almost this burden that they feel, not a burden, but that this added job that they felt like they needed to do to make sure that they were pulling or making room for other Black and Latinx attorneys or aspiring attorneys to follow. But then on the other hand, they also identified that because they were pursuing public interest, with the exception of NYU and CUNY law, they felt that their schools were not supporting them in their quests for public interest. They felt that the overwhelming majority of the focus typically goes to placement in big law, in addition to the on-campus interviewing and how biased that is, where if you're not at a top tier school, that the likelihood of, or if, I think they said that if you were not at a top tier school or were not in the top 5% of your class, then you really didn't have the option to pursue big law, which kind of defaulted you to public interest. And the schools just really don't offer any type of recruitment, on-campus interviewing for public interest, they reported that you just had to figure it out. And so for the amount of Black and Latinx students or aspiring attorneys who wanted to go into public interest, they felt like they needed more support, like the amount of energy and effort that's put into securing places for big law, they feel like that should be the same for public interest. And I thought that was very interesting. Even they had about 4 attorneys who are currently practicing big law, and only one desired to maintain their career in big law. The other 3 were using that as a way to make money, and then they would be pursuing public interest. So it was kind of a general consensus that public interest should be better supported in terms of job availability and preparation for what's to come after, even with the financial disadvantage with working in public interest. So we really found that was a very interesting finding. And that was from a Black female 3L student. So what are the pipeline gaps? We found that it was the most prominent one was first generation culture shock. Then we found that mentoring, there was a gap in mentoring and also student tracking. So first generation culture shock. I just had to figure out a lot of stuff out on my own. And so even though I love this quote, because even though it's like a very short, blunt, it really hit home what the respondents were saying. It was, one respondent, I recall, they told me, how does everyone just know how to talk like this? And, you get to law school and everything matters on day one. And so we just didn't know that. And it's like, law school, and this is, paraphrasing, but this is, law school from day one matters. And you come into this environment and you're just expected to know how to write things. What is the jargon? Be familiar with the setting culturally and educationally. And so they were just like, they felt like a fish out of water. Coming from most of the Black and Latinx respondents were not only first generation law school students, but most of them were first generation college students. And so they felt completely, ill-equipped to start on day one compared to their counterparts. They felt that they noticed how other students just kind of folded in. And not to say that it was easier for them as they folded in, but just knowing what to expect. And so that first generation culture shock, and they said once they caught up, because of course they were successful, most of them have made it past their 1L year, they just feel like had they been prepared on day one, that would have provided a more solid foundation for moving forward and being successful. So the next component was the mentoring. Mentoring also came up with every interviewee. Either they were saying that they had mentors, which if they had not had mentors, they don't feel like they would have been successful. Or if they didn't have mentors, they were like, that was the key thing that was missing while they were in law school. And most of the interviewees responded, even if they were not able to be matched with a Black or Latinx mentor, that just having someone to say, hey, come here, let me check on you. How are you doing? This is how you need to navigate this. But they really were looking for other Black or Latinx mentors just to have the context for what they would be, experiencing in law school. And the ones who had that said that it was invaluable and that they attribute their mentors to their success. So the mentors, I have been able to dodge a couple of bullets, so to speak, because I had mentors, people who came back. And so a lot of the interviewees kept referencing giving back, coming back, meaning that once you complete or are successful as an attorney, you have to remember to pay it forward, right? And so the last portion was, the last section that we found was student tracking for the pipeline programs. So like I said, they didn't have any major complaints of the participants. There were no major complaints other than they need more pipeline programs and more pipeline visibility. But in terms of the student tracking, it was reported like pipelines stop when they reach their goal. I think they need to take it one step further. And that actually came from a pipeline program director. And so this director reported that they do such a great job, but these are very short, intense programs. Now, there are quite a few that actually extend beyond about a year, but after they complete the program, they felt like they would just kind of cast to the wind. And so they were looking for more support, more making sure that, what other resources are available, what do you need, and how could they create this community of resources and networking for Black and Latinx students to have as they move through their legal profession. So from this study, I was able to make 6 recommendations for the city bar and also all of the key stakeholders that are involved in making and lessening the disparity for Black and Latinx students. I'm going to quickly run through them. So the first is developing a program akin to the Office of Diversity and Inclusion signatory firm structure, which they have this signatory firm where these firms commit to participating in diversity programs and providing internships with incentives. And so just like for the signatory firms, I recommended that the schools also have this structure to where they commit to diversifying or offering more programs to better support Black and Latinx students, especially for in the law school frame. So also creating a digital centralized location for all pipeline programs, meaning that as students are finishing, they will have an online resource to say, okay, if I'm starting in middle school, what's the next program in high school? Where's the legal programs in law school? So that it actually creates a continuous pipeline where there are no leaks. The third is encouraging each New York-based college, prep, high school, undergraduate, and law school to develop pre-law programs. That is the most important. Yes, we should be catching students at middle school to make sure that they're on track, even if they're not sure if they're pursuing law, because many people said, okay, middle school is kind of early to know whether or not what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. But research has found that even if they don't ultimately pursue law, having these resources, this type of support is also invaluable, regardless of what they actually pursue. So getting these students that even if you're not catching them until they're ready for law school, have that transitional program available so that they know what's available for day one and that they're ready to hit the ground running. So then we have developing a network for Black and Hispanic Latinx pipeline program alumni for New York-based programs. That's in reference to the tracking, making sure that they have people to reach out to and to connect with to see what's available, especially when it came to public interest. We have recommending alternative program schedules and structures to accommodate for non-traditional students with rigid work schedules. This was also important with the pipeline programs because there were participants who said they would have liked to, but they had to work. They can't afford to work. They can't afford to forego work to go to a free pipeline program, or even if they could attend the program, it was during the work hours where they had to go to work instead of participate in the programs during the day. So an alternative is to have online programs now that, of course, this was done before COVID. So now most people are familiar with online platforms. So maybe online classes, evening classes, just to accommodate for non-traditional students. And lastly, assembling an accountability task force to monitor outcomes for Black and Hispanic Latinx participants in a signatory pipeline program. So again, it's all about accountability. We can talk, we can have panels, but if there's no measure of accountability to track if we are being successful or at least improving in the disparity or lessening the disparity, then this is all fruitless. And so we need to have a task force with, interdisciplinary task force to make sure that we are meeting the needs of Black and Latinx students. So thank you. And if you have any questions, make sure you write them down. We'll have questions at the end. And also here's my email address. You can reach out to me anytime for any questions that you have about the report or my findings. Thank you. Okay, so I have to stop sharing my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Barnell. that was very helpful. So Professor Barnell has kind of provided us with the lay of the land for pipeline programs, but now we'll hear from folks who are directing these programs and get a little bit more into the details. So you'll be hearing from myself, as I'm a past director of the University of Buffalo School of Law's undergraduate Discover Law program. You will then hear from Professor Elaine Chu, who is a professor of law and also works in the family law department, and the director of Ronald H. Brown Law School's prep program for college students at St. John's University School of Law. You will also hear from Professor Natalie Gomez Velez, who's a professor of law at the City University of New York School of Law and the director of the Center for Latinx Rights and Equality. So I will go ahead and start by sharing my screen. One moment. Okay, so let's talk about UB School of Law's Discover Law Undergraduate Scholars Program. As I said, I'm the former Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm no longer in that role. However, our current program director is Luis Chiesa, my colleague, who is the Vice Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And you can see her here on this slide, the School of Law's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion website, where you can learn more about this program. So essentially, the Discover Law program was established out of recognition for the power of diversity. The School of Law understood and recognized that there is a shortage of minoritized people entering the field of law, as has been discussed at different points throughout this presentation. So the School of Law created the Discover Law Undergraduate Scholars Program to provide an immersive experience for undergraduate students interested in pursuing a career in law. And our goals were to expose students to critical thinking and help them develop reading and analytical skills, and also provide them an in-depth experience. Traditionally, this program is held in person. However, due to COVID-19, this summer, the program will be held virtually. So about the program a little bit. So at UB, one of our institutional goals for achieving inclusive excellence is the goal of attracting, retaining, and graduating diverse and culturally competent student body. So one of our strategies to achieve this goal is through pipeline programs, and we just heard about the importance of that. So our pipeline program is one that contributes to the overall diversification of law schools. So not only at UB School of Law, but also at law schools around the country. And then obviously also contributes to diversity in the legal profession. So it's a 4-week program. And as I said, it typically takes place on UB's campus. And essentially we have served about 16 to 20 students each summer. They're provided academic instruction, community experiences, and wraparound support while they participate in the program, and I'll get into a bit more detail about that. But first, let's talk about student qualifications. So the students that we serve are historically excluded students and underrepresented students and first-generation undergraduates who have completed their freshman or sophomore year of college. And favorable consideration is given to students who have demonstrated a record of academic achievement. I just want to note that we target freshmen and sophomores because we do believe in early intervention. We want them to have this experience early on in their undergraduate careers so that they are thinking about law school while they still have time to prepare for that during undergrad. So we offer both courses and then some other unique features. We talked about law school preparation earlier. So students are exposed to both doctrinal and legal writing courses taught by law school faculty. They participate in an ethnography seminar. They receive courses on LSAT preparation and the law school admissions process. And then they also get individual advising, both from law students who help out with the program, from the program director, and then from their attorney mentors. Some other unique features of our program. So this is a community effort. We have an open plenary session hosted by the Minority Bar Association of Western New York and UB alumni. They're heavily involved. We have a legal dialogue series where judges, attorneys, and sometimes local activists come to lunch with students while sharing their professional journeys. The students participate in interactive tours to family court and federal court. They will get an introduction to mass incarceration, criminal justice reform, and restorative justice. So the last iteration of the program, we had a local activist who actually had spent time being formally incarcerated speak to the students, and he's an expert in restorative justice, so they were able to speak with him. And then we have a series of discussions hosted at and by local law firms about various legal practice areas. The students also complete a capstone experience, which is essentially a moot court based on their legal writing and research case file. So at the end of the summer, it accumulates into them doing this oral argument. So not only do they get legal analysis writing skills, they also get some of that oral advocacy. And then a huge part of our program, a local partner, Jody Galvin, some of you may know her, she matches our Discover Law students with judges and lawyers who work with students throughout the summer session, and those mentors provide the students with advice, support, and networking opportunities. So the student outcomes are that they get critical thinking skills, close reading skills, and legal analysis skills. They do that through writing and oral advocacy. They also get practical strategies for doing well on the LSAT and successfully navigating the law school admissions process. So our record of success, we've had 130 scholars complete the program. 91 past participants have enrolled in law school, graduated from law school, or are planning to apply. And this is inclusive of UB School of Law. And then we also have some participants, we count this as success. So some students do the program and they decide law school is not for them, and then end up pursuing other graduate degree programs. And these students have told us that the skills they have learned through the Discover Law program are translatable into their other degree programs. And of course, we need a lot of community support to present this program, to facilitate this program every summer. It's a very rigorous program. So through the generosity of our community and UB sponsors, there's no cost for participants in our Discover Law program. And when we are able, we do provide stipends to students. So when we have the funds, it is important for us to provide these stipends because, as Professor Barnell said, some students are not able to participate in programs that they're not receiving financial aid there. So that's an important piece for us. And that is it for my portion. I will stop my share and pass it off to my colleague, Professor Chu.
Thank you so much. I've learned so much already, and I'm eager to share with all of you. So I am a member of the faculty at St. John's University School of Law. And I am also, as has been said, the director of the Ronald H. Brown Prep Program. So let me share my screen, and I hope I do this right. So what I wanted to share is that the Ron Brown Prep Program, which is the name we use as a shortcut, is a program that is a pre-law pipeline program, but it's also a program that we have really not just for college students. We actually have been around for a while. And so Currently, we define ourselves really as helping diverse individuals learn about the profession and navigate law school admissions. Individuals today, last summer is just a great example. We work with high school students. We worked with college students. We also worked with adult learners who were already past their undergraduate college graduation date. And now the adult learners we worked with last year were folks who were in our court systems doing paralegal work, legal adjacent work, legal support work. And so it was a real pleasure to run our first adult learner program last year. We also, like I think the UB program, define diversity really quite broadly. And so we're really looking for individuals who come from a background of difference. And for us, what we typically have are cohorts that do have backgrounds of poverty, food insecurity. They are often minoritized individuals as well, first in their family to go to college, professional school. Some are first in their family to complete high school. And so we have had really a very broad definition of diversity, and that's really served us well. The prep program itself, because it's been around for, this will be our 16th year in operation, we have really grown and today enjoy really what is a national reach, a national impact. We draw students from really across the country. Recently, in the pandemic, we were trying to get a little bit more local and get back to New York City. But because of some of the national reach, we actually have had quite a bit of national impact too, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. We have been, supported by grants, supported by awards. I think that what we really take pride in is, and I kind of realize this is a bit boastful, we like to think of ourselves as the most comprehensive pipeline program out there. I actually think the truth is that with more and more pipeline programs out there, we are perhaps one of the most comprehensive now. There's a lot of impressive efforts out there. But what we mean by the most comprehensive is we actually try to do many of the things that have been suggested from Professor Banal's remarks, from the description of the UB program as well. And so we really try to do it all. And so we provide a lot of pre-law training and academic support and academic learning. We provide internships. We provide mentorships. We do a really rigorous LSAT test prep training course for our participants. We do mental health and wellness counseling. We have a speaker series. We do resume advising. We're going to build in LinkedIn advising this summer. So there's a lot that we do, and it is a lot of work, but we do think it is our secret sauce. How do we get that done? We actually have, like you've heard from, again, lots of speakers, a reliance on a lot of cooperation and collaboration with a lot of different kinds of individuals and a lot of different kinds of organizations. And so some of you are with us in this program today. So for instance, we have collaborated before with the commission. We have also collaborated with many state judges who are with us today. Many of them have sponsored and hosted interns for us. We definitely collaborate with law firms. Just a big shout out to Harris Beach. I know one of our very close partners at Harris Beach is here with us on this call. And so we get it done because we kind of manage and supervise the village. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like on the ground, last year at this time, in mid-April, like much of the country, we were holding our breath and we didn't really know what was in front of us. And for a moment, a very brief moment, we thought about canceling everything that we had thought we would be doing in person in the summer of 2020. But that moment passed and we realized that once again, the people that we help, the people that we have in our programs needed us probably more than ever. And so what ended up happening was from basically May through August, we had our busiest summer ever. We worked with close to 100 different participants across 4 programs. And I just like to show these slides so that you could get, if you wanted to read, a sense of how our program is definitely a multi-year program, and how we take all of the things that I said we do and kind of divide it across different summers or different programs. And so this first slide talks about probably the folks who are at the final stages of the pipeline. At least the stage is before they go to law school. And so we had about 40, 45 people with us. Some were adult learners and some were college students who were basically seniors. And what we basically did with them was have them do our LSAT summer, our LSAT program. And we provided really small faculty to student ratios, close to 100 hours of LSAT prep. For people who were looking to retake, we even also pay for private tutoring with their instructors. And so a lot of this experience is about this LSAT. We, for the adult learners, programmed everything on Saturday. And amazingly, 25 people stayed with us every Saturday morning, starting in June 2020 through really October 2020 to work on the LSAT during this awful pandemic. And they are really one of the most resilient classes we worked with. But in addition to those 45 students, we actually worked with some others who were younger, frankly, and in earlier stages of the pipeline. And so we had about 30 students with us who were similar to the UB program, college sophomores, college juniors. They were with us virtually. And for them, we did, a tiny bit of LSAT, but what we mostly did was academic classwork, and we did academic training. And we also tried to provide them a little bit of exposure to the legal profession. It was hard to, we usually would have paired them with an internship too, but that was very hard in the summer of 2020. And so we let that go. Finally, the bottom program that you see here was our first efforts at the Ron Brown Prep program anyway, to work with high school students. And basically, this was a program that was inspired and born out of the tragedy of George Floyd. And we were approached by 2 professional sports teams in our area, the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Liberty, and their parent organization, looking to do something, as so many of us were in that moment. And they decided to ask us if we would put together a high school program that they would fund, and if we could put it together on a dime. And so basically within 3 weeks, we put together a high school program that was a virtual 2-week program for high school kids in our areas. This would be kind of the metropolitan area of New York City, where the teams play, where the teams have a strong fan base. And what we created was basically a sports law program with some civil rights law. And also we did some skill work. I personally taught a negotiation course to these high school kids. They were amazing. We created a lot of fun exercises for them about their lives, from getting an extension on their papers to, trying to sell a pair of Yeezy sneakers. It was really fun. And that was just an amazing experience. And so with that, we basically ended up helping and being a part of so many people's journeys. So what has been the outcomes of what we have done all these years? I want to say that, again, we've been around now for 16 years. And unlike UB, we don't have exacting numbers, because I think our ability to track alumni has been imperfect, because we weren't so good about that in our early years, and today still have trouble trying to find some lost alumni, the leaks, as Professor Bernal said. But our estimates are that we've worked with over about 500 people, maybe I want to say close to 700 people through these 16 summers. Our outcomes, our percentages, I think are pretty strong. And like UB, we consider success and define it really broadly, but most of our funders want to talk about success as law school matriculation. And so we've had more than 300 participants, including a speaker that you'll hear from in just a few moments, Natalia Marte, and one of our past participants, so proud of her. But more than 300 of them have attended, have graduated from schools. And I want to say this, we're really proud that they've graduated from 55 different law schools across the country. And so we have been, I think, a diversifying effort and diversifying success program at not just diversifying St. John's, but really diversifying our sister and brother law schools across the country. In fact, what I want to share with you is that St. John's every year has maybe a handful of 1Ls from the prep program in its 1L class. I actually think there are some schools out there like UB and Georgetown that may have historically actually gotten more of our students. And of course, there's a lot of structural reasons for that. But what I really love about the fact that we have been sending students to so many different places is because it really speaks to what is true about the Ron Brown Prep program, and I hope a number of other programs out there. And that's that when we do law school advising and law school kind of acceptance advising and application advising, we lead and prioritize the interests of that individual student. And if they want to be on the West Coast, if they get an amazing scholarship from a school in Florida, that's where they should be. That's where they should be. This is not about us trying to diversify our building, right? This is about them and their dreams and their journeys. And so it's heartbreaking for us when they don't come and be with us, but we get it and we support them. And so I want to close with this. I think that pipeline program work is very hard work. I think it's incredibly time consuming, resource consuming. And this last slide just gives you a sense of, the many different ways that we try to invite organizations and individuals to collaborate with us. Because there's every organization has something of value to give. Every organization, every person has different obstacles and barriers to their giving. And I think one of the hardest things about pipeline work is the relationship management that the work really requires. And so I spend a lot of time, I wish I had more time to get to know all the organizations and individuals that have supported us, to stay in touch with them, to really understand where they are at right now, what their goals are, what their barriers are. But, somehow every year we pull it together, and together we deliver these amazing kind of results. The final thing I'll just say about pipeline work, and then I'm happy to turn it over to my colleague at CUNY, is that to really, I think, have meaning and to really have impact, you have to give of your treasure. And I've learned that through the last couple of years, the last 6 years I've been running this program. It reminds me of my oldest when he was in first grade, and the class ran after Halloween, a Halloween candy drive, because we had all gotten too much Halloween candy. And so, the first day, all the little kids brought in, some candy. And as this teacher kind of, was taking bag of candy and putting them into one big bag, she was like, these are nice candies. But she went and she asked the kids, like, but did you kind of handpick these candies? And when you were handpicking these candies, like, are these all your least favorite candies, or the candies you don't love at all? Right? And she made them and asked them and invited them to go back home that night, and maybe to come back the next day, and to give some candy that was really close to their heart and really their favorites, right? To give some of their treasure, And I think that we all have a lot of treasure to share, whether it's information so that kids don't have to figure it all out for themselves, whether it's money, right? Whether it's the opportunity, the name of your law firm on their resume, right? Your time, your intellectual power on the problem that these kids are facing. I think that's the hardest thing. There's a lot of great pipeline programs out there, but I think that the ones that truly have impact are the ones that really invite people to go that distance and to really give of their treasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. And at this time, we will have Professor Natalie Gomez-Velez present. While she is setting up and getting ready to share her screen, I do want to let our participants know that we will be posting this recording on the School of Law, UB School of Law's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion page, and I will post the link in the chat. And we will also be sharing it with our other co-hosts who I'm sure will post as they will like. And without further ado, I will pass it over to my colleague.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the Franklin Williams Judicial Commission, to co-chairs, Judges Weber and Troutman, to the fabulous co-hosts here, all of the law schools. Many thanks to the organizers, my co-panelists. I just love the Ron Brown program, all of the programs that are mentioned here, to Professor Bernal for that excellent report. And it really is spot on in so many ways. And to our audience and other participants, who are supporting pathways to diversity and inclusion in law. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm going to speak briefly about two pipeline programs. One is at the law school, CUNY Law's Pipeline to Justice program, and another is not at the New York Legal Education Opportunity Program. And so both of these programs take place at the threshold of law school, right? Both involve substantive foundations of law and academic support and other related supports, many of which you've heard about from other pipeline programs. The Pipeline to Justice program seeks to expand the pool of law students right at the admissions stage. New York LEO seeks to strengthen the existing pool of admitted and waitlisted law students' chances, not only for success, but the ability to achieve to their highest potential. So I'm going to start with CUNY's Pipeline to Justice program. So Pipeline to Justice is coordinated with the law school's admissions process. As I said, it's designed to expand the current pool of students from underserved communities who otherwise would not have been admitted. A key difference between this program and the early intervention pipeline programs is that CUNY Law works with students who want to go to law school now, rather than younger students who are aspiring to become lawyers later. And one impetus for the Pipeline to Justice program is frankly impatience with the slow progress of the legal profession's diversity and inclusion efforts. So, and also with our mission, right? As you may know, CUNY Law's mission, it's a dual mission to graduate excellent public interest and public service lawyers who will practice law in the service of human needs, and to diversify the legal profession by providing access to Black, Latinx students, and others traditionally excluded and underrepresented in the legal profession. And so the genesis of the Pipeline to Justice program was the observation that a significant number of really impressive, diverse, committed law school applicants who were meeting CUNY Law's mission had LSAT scores that raised concerns about whether they had sufficient academic foundations to succeed through law school, pass the bar, and become attorneys, right? We're looking to make sure that anyone who gets admitted achieves through the program. And the thinking behind the program was informed by the understanding that the LSAT, right, with the stats that are pictured here, 1, has a disproportionate impact on applicants of color. 2, is greatly overvalued in law school admissions, due in large part to its weight and rankings methodology. And 3, correlates with privilege. At the same time, there was some recognition that an LSAT score is not entirely meaningless, right? It does measure analytical, verbal, logical reasoning skills relevant to lawyering and bar passage. But at the same time, these skills can be learned. Studies have shown that one reason for poor performance on the LSAT is lack of access to educational preparation and or helpful test-taking skills. So with focused preparation and skills, some students can perform substantially, significantly better. And just as a reminder of the relationship between overemphasis on LSAT and lawyer demographics, when you see these statistics, and I know Professor Bernal mentioned them and others mentioned them, this persistence of the low participation of African American, Latino, Hispanic, Native American, and others in the legal profession, it's just stubbornly, disproportionately, and unacceptably low. And so CUNY Law's Pipeline to Justice program, again, it's very much related to the dual mission and admissions policies. It is a rigorous year-long program intended to take applicants who have scored below a certain percentile on the LSAT exam, yet who demonstrate academic promise, serious commitment to a social justice legal career, and other strengths that are aligned with the law school's mission and program. I talked some of those discussed here. So here's how it works, and I'll stay on this slide a little bit, right? Toward the end of an admissions cycle, the committee reviews applications of students who have not been admitted that year, and yet who have indications that they are good candidates for the Pipeline to Justice program. They look for students who have overcome challenges in their lives, come from groups underrepresented in the profession, and this is students of color and others from underrepresented groups, and who evince a willingness to engage in hard work to achieve the goal of becoming a lawyer. And those who are selected then are invited to apply to the Pipeline to Justice, which gives them a second chance to matriculate into CUNY Law School. Now, about between 40 and 50 students are admitted into the program. The applications open in March. There's a deadline of either the later of July 15th, 2021, or within 2 weeks of the denial letter and an invitation to apply, whichever is later. Those who get in the part one of the program, during that program, which starts in October, students meet several times each week for 17 weeks for LSAT preparation. They then take both the January and the February LSAT exams with the hope of improving their scores. And based on our own institutional research about what minimum LSAT score may predict success in our first year program and beyond, Pipeline to Justice students who score within that range are admitted to part 2 of the pipeline. Those who are on the borderline with within a few points of the threshold are assessed individually for their level of preparation and likelihood of success, and are invited to part 2 as well. So the experience has been that about half of the part 1 students advance to part 2. Part 2 then involves an 8-week analytical reasoning and professional writing intensive course. Right, the students work with a pipeline consultant and with our academic support faculty as writing coaches on some of their assignments. The course also focuses on confidence building, how to access a variety of supports during law school, and other kinds of supportive information. Part 2 also intensively engages students in critical reading, graduate level writing, logical reasoning skills, right, to prepare the students for the rigors of law school, focuses on core writing skills, everything from the basics, grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, et cetera, as well as the importance of revision and rewriting, which students engage in throughout the course. It is, as Professor Chu said and others, it's a labor-intensive course founded on learning theory that emphasizes receiving copious feedback and rewriting until you get it right, emphasizing the basic paradigm of legal analysis, issue, rule, application, conclusion, and all of those things that will support success through law school. So then part 2 culminates in an exam, a final exam. Those who successfully pass the part 2 exam matriculate to the law school without any further application requirements. Another feature that's important in the Pipeline to Justice program is intentional cohort building. And it's what we call the opposite of forming a competitive community. Instead, the pipeline cohorts co-create a close, supportive community within the CUNY Law community. Finally, the program offers every graduating pipeline student bar support during summer bar study, and CUNY Law alums go on through Pipeline to do what every other successful law grad does. Some have even gotten together and created successful law firms, and so we've seen real support through our Pipeline program. Here are some testimonials, and I would note, this discussion on the right that really focuses on the importance of the cohorts and the support through the program. Time is short, so I'm going to now turn to the New York Legal Education Opportunity Program. And this program is actually was established in 2007 by former Chief Judge Judith S. Kaye to help ensure a diverse legal community by promoting academic success for those historically underrepresented in the legal profession. It continued from 2007 through 2009, but then extensive budget cuts in the aftermath of, remember, the Great Recession forced the program's suspension for a period of time. But then, as a result of proactive leadership and advocacy of Assemblywoman Latoya Joyner, who's pictured here as well, who is a New York Leo alumna from 2009, funding was restored and the program revived in 2016. And I was so pleased to have directed in the program in the summers of 2017 and 2018. And it was directed by Andrea Kelly Higgs in 2019. And so New York Leo is designed to promote academic success in law school for students underrepresented, students of color, underrepresented in law school and the legal profession, first in their families, etc. And in many senses, it seeks to respond to the familiar phrase among Black and brown families and others that basically you have to be twice as good to get half as much or half as far. So it's not only designed to level the playing field, but to prepare law students, first in their families, students of color, to achieve to their maximum potential. So it's an intensive on-site 6-week summer program, some call it a summer boot camp for prospective law students. Here's the eligibility, right? The applicants must be minority, economically or educationally disadvantaged, be a college graduate by June of the summer, and have applied and plan to attend law school in New York State in the fall, in that following fall of the program year. New York Leo was sponsored and housed at the Judicial Institute, the New York State Judicial Institute in White Plains. It was supervised by the Honorable Juanita B. Newton, Dean of the New York State Judicial Institute. Again, it's a 6-week on-site intensive program in partnership with the Judicial Institute, the state courts, and Pace Law School. All classes are held at the Judicial Institute, and the fellows dorm at Pace Law School and provided meals during that period through Pace Law School. It consists of several components that are listed here. And as you see in this photo, by design, the fellows are a diverse group, many first generation in their families to attend college, most first in their families to attend any type of professional school. And again, we have a notion of cohorts here that go forward. Again, the program consists of, you start with orientation, law school classes, guest speakers, court office court visits and law office visits, mentoring, and a closing ceremony. I'll touch briefly on these. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. So orientation. The orientation program is not just like, here's where everything is, but the orientation invites folks from various law schools and experts to talk about things like how to plan for law school, how to plan financially, thinking about loans, financial aid, planning ahead, not getting yourself too far into debt, how to manage finances during law school, for example. Also, for example, Nita Escalera, the Assistant Dean of Students, came and talked to the fellows about navigating law school, right? Where to get supports, what kinds of things to expect, what's available to have you prepared for law school. Then students go immediately into rigorous classes, right? Doctrinal classes, civil procedure, contracts, torts, legal skills and analysis. And they're taught by experts and, in a rigorous way so that students are prepared for law school. Some of the teachers in the program include Honorable Jenny Rivera of the Court of Appeals, Dean Horace Anderson of Pace Law School. And we also have guest speakers, including judges. Here you have the Honorable Nelson Roman, who came in during lunch periods and other times to speak with the students, give them a sense of the questions that they might have around the legal profession. And going on, the students also, when they're not in class, and usually Fridays, there are court visits and law office visits where the Leo Fellows engage and demystify the legal process. The visits have included visits to the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, to the Second Circuit. There they heard oral arguments and spoke with attorneys afterwards. They visited the Bronx criminal courts where they observed arraignments and other court proceedings, had lunch with judges and lawyers, prosecutors, defense attorneys. They visited the Appellate Division, First Department. They visited the Legislative Office of Assemblywoman Latoya Joyner. And again, all of these visits are accompanied by substantive materials related to the courts and the proceedings, the cases. There's discussions, Q&A. I know many folks on the Franklin Williams Judicial Commission. Others I know in this audience have participated in talking with, mentoring, and engaging with the New York Leo Fellows. And the program culminates in a closing reception that, in addition to celebrating, and it's hard work, the hard work and accomplishments in the program and celebrating the start of law school, it's an opportunity for the students to connect with, for the fellows to connect with mentors, because an important part of the program is connecting the fellows with mentors so that as they go forward and enter law school, they have those mentoring relationships. And again, so Leo is designed to meet the students where they are and to really provide not only the skills, and going to Professor Bernal, one of the things that she said early on is the not knowing, I had to figure it out, a lot out on my own. It's really designed to help students figure that out in advance before they get to law school. Here are the things that you need to know so that you're not figuring them out on your own. We have the confidence, and you can build the confidence to ensure that you can not only succeed, but excel in law school, and that you have a community of support behind you. So much like many of these pipeline programs, and it's interesting, I'm seeing the positive, there are testimonials to the positive, but also the need to continue to support. They're precarious. I love Professor Chu's mention of giving their treasure, ensuring to continue the support for those programs. And so I'll stop there. I have some selected references. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Gomez-Velez. So at this time, we are a little short. We are running late on time. So what I'm going to ask is if our panelists have received specific questions via the Q&A function, if you want to write out your responses and chat them to the audience, please feel free to do that if that makes sense. And if we have time, I'll address those that have been posted in the chat along with taking other questions at the end of the program. At this time, we will hear from recent graduates of New York law schools. So joining me will be Patara Jeppe, who is a 2019 graduate of Syracuse University College of Law and a Walensky Fellowship Attorney for Disability Rights Advocates. Also joining me will be Natalia Marte, a 2020 graduate of the University at Buffalo School of Law and an assistant appellate court attorney at the New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division, 4th Department. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here. So this portion of the program, it's going to be a little bit more conversational, and we feel as though you ladies are the best people to hear from in terms of how you succeeded in law school as women of color, from the beginning of your journey to the end. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and feel free to chime in. First, we'll start with what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in preparing to get to law school?
I can take a first stab at it.
So for me, one of the biggest challenges was, and like our panelists just mentioned, is just not knowing the whole law school application process, right? So like in terms of what tests I needed to take, whether I needed to take a course in order to prepare for it, how to manage taking this course and fitting it into my full-time work and also full-time student schedule, how to ace admissions interviews. So there were a bunch of things that I just wasn't aware of when it came to the law school application process. And I felt like it definitely did put me at a disadvantage when I was first preparing for it. But thankfully I did seek out resources, and while I was at John Jay College of Criminal Justice pursuing my graduate degree, I met one of my mentors, Jody Rory, who was at the time a director for the Ronald H. Brown Law School Prep Program at John Jay College, which also collaborates with Professor Chu's Law School Prep Program as well. And through this program, I was able to get a lot of the resources that I didn't have before. So for example, I was part of a mentoring program with current law students and practicing attorneys. I was able to enroll in an LSAT prep course. I interned with Honorable Judge Francois Rivera in the Brooklyn Civil Court and kind of got some legal experience under my belt before even attending law school, which to me also exposed me to kind of like how to formulate your arguments in court, how to read cases, how to learn, how to analyze cases and apply the laws to the facts. So I was able to, I guess, bridge the gap that I had when it came to law school by participating in the Ronald H. Brown Law School Prep Program, which is now called the Rising Scholars of Justice Program. So I think law school prep programs definitely do make a difference in students of color getting admitted into law school.
So I experienced some of this similar things that you mentioned. But in addition to being an African American woman from Brooklyn, New York, I am also extremely dyslexic. My disability really dictated my law school journey. It made it one that was very windy, to be honest. My first challenge was, how was I going to take the LSAT? Or I would say even before that, my first challenge was being reevaluated. The silly notion that you have to be reevaluated every 3 years and every 5 years after you turn 21 meant that I didn't have a smooth transition from undergrad to law school. I knew that I'd have to take time to get reevaluated, something that is very expensive. And then having to apply for accommodations that I had received on standardized tests since I was 8 years old. And I was denied that right to take the LSAT. And so for me, it was searching for, well, what are my rights? What are the rules? Attorneys to represent me, to refile. The Justice Department ended up having a consent decree that allowed so many of us to reapply and to refile. But then also, how was I going to study for this exam? I like many of my peers, weren't able to do it traditionally in a large cohort. I knew that my test would be accommodated, so my prep needed to be as well. And so finding tutors and figuring out how I was going to pay for that. So my journey to law school was not a straight path. And the lack of accommodations, the denial of accommodations, my legal right was something that I came up against time and time again throughout the process.
So Patara, let's stick with you and talk a little bit more about that, since what you've said flows into my next question. Given all of that, what resources do you wish that you had? And I think you can talk both about in preparation for law school and while you were in law school. And then we'll go to Natalia for her thoughts as well.
Yeah, so for me, there was a lot of reinventing the wheel. And I think entering law school, right? It was my big thing once I took the LSAT, right? My LSAT score wasn't particularly strong, not because I wasn't smart and not because I didn't know the material, and this would come up again when I took the bar, but because my accommodation of double time meant that, for the LSAT, I believe it was 9 hours. For the bar, it was 8.5 hours each day for 4 consecutive days. There's stamina issues. You can remember whatever obscure law, but am I able to do that? Am I able to listen to everything? And that meant that what law school I was applying to, they had to look at me as a whole applicant. Because though I had really strong undergrad grades, I graduated magna cum laude, my LSAT score was lower. And beyond that, I really was looking for a school that would be able to support me in terms of accommodations. And what I wish I had was more schools who provided accommodations, meaningful accommodations that had robust programs and not just one person in their office. I applied to schools that I aspire to go to. And one of the first things I did was not just meet with the admissions person or department, but also meet with the learning disability program or disability support services or whatever the name was at that institution. And for some of those institutions, I got really great responses. They were excited to have me, but I was asked, how do you plan on doing this? And so for me, I think one of the things that stands out is having better support services at law schools, acknowledging disability as diversity, and understanding the intersectionality between the two. Because I not only have a disability, but I am also come from a racial minority group that's also underrepresented. And so I think at every stage of the law school process, there needs to be experts who are able to guide the journey, because our timelines are completely different. The requirements in terms of paperwork and evaluation and when you need to start applying for certain things are completely different. And there's a lack of that for a majority of law schools across the nation.
Thank you for that insight. Let's go to Natalia. So you talked about what resources you utilize, but Natalia, ideally for you, what would resources during the law school application process and then during law school look like for you?
I think for me, if I was being quite honest, I would have preferred to have more financial resources. And I think one of the biggest issues with law schools and the legal profession in general, when we speak about diversity, we want to recruit diverse individuals. And we are conscious of the communities and the economic issues that a lot of Black and Brown communities face, but then we tend to ignore that once we bring diverse individuals to the law school and to the legal profession. And that is a really big issue, because if we ask ourselves, why are there certain students of color that are not performing academically well compared to other students, then I think one of the answers is that they're going through a lot of financial burdens and they're not receiving the support that they should be receiving, right? So I think for me, when I was going through the law school application process, even though I had all of the resources like how to apply to law school, taking the LSAT prep course, it was difficult for me to even access the actual law school applications, right? Because I needed money to actually apply. So I think a lot of these resources can only go a certain way. And I think it's important to provide the financial support that is needed to actually access a law school application, or the materials that you need to provide to law schools, or even just take a LSAT prep course. And this is similar to my law school experience itself, right? Like, even though I am grateful for a lot of the financial support that I did receive while I was at my law school, I know there's a bunch of students of color that a financial burden was literally crippling their academic success throughout law school. And, finances is something that can be a really quick fix in order to guarantee someone's academic success. So I think financial support is definitely something that I wish I had, and I wish more students of color have when they're entering law school and like the legal profession.
Thank you for that important insight. If we don't speak candidly about these issues, we will never improve. So I thank you both for being so candid and honest in your responses. You both did kind of touch on the resources that you did utilize. So starting with Natalia, could you talk about those and kind of lay out how, in spite of all of these challenges, you were able to be successful in law school? And then we'll go to Pachar.
Yeah, sure. So from the law school prep program that I attended, which I am still eternally grateful for, because I feel like I literally whatever I didn't know, I learned during my participation in the program. So like I was speaking before, I was part of a mentoring program where I was matched to attorneys of color and also law students of color, which to me was super important for me to have that connection, because I feel like when you're being mentored by someone that looks like you or is representing the same race or ethnicity group that you're a part of, I think there are different and more candid conversations that are had in terms of like the experience that you should be expecting and the type of support that you need. So I think definitely the mentoring program did have a crucial effect in my success in applying to law schools. Also the legal experience that I had, I felt a little, prior to entering law school, one of the reasons why I felt like I was at a disadvantage was because I wasn't born with a network similar to a lot of Black and Brown communities and those that are part of other marginalized groups. So I knew that I needed to create one. And that's one of the things that the law school prep program taught me, sort of like how to put yourself out there, how to highlight your adversities in a positive way and show people that like, even though I have gone through certain issues or adversity, I am still capable of doing whatever needs to be done in the legal profession. I was also, one of the resources that I'm also grateful for was getting my materials reviewed. And I think that a lot of students of color don't have that type of resource, right? So we might have mentors that might take a quick look at it, but when you have actual experts and professionals that are part of a law school prep program reviewing it, it's a very different experience and advantage that you have. And one other thing that I will mention is one of the best resources that I received was also mental health counseling. And I think that's super important to have prior to law school and also during law school, because I think it's important to stay sane throughout the process, especially as a person of color, when you're having very difficult conversations in a classroom environment that's predominantly white, and when you're speaking about certain cases that you might yourself not be an expert in, and even the professor might not even know how to navigate. So, you know, you kind of leave the class with, I guess, not feeling emotionally balanced. So I think going through like mental health counseling before law school and even during law school was extremely helpful.
I just want to comment on that and emphasize that comment, Natalia, especially as we kind of started out talking about how it has been a difficult week in our country, and that mental health piece is so important for our students who have been minoritized and historically excluded, dealing with concurrent tragedies at the same time while pursuing the practice of law is a lot. So I do want to emphasize that piece, that mental health piece, being so important for our students. Patara, we'll go to you. So in spite of maybe not having the ideal resources that you had, how were you able to overcome that and be successful in your career?
Yes, so I didn't participate in a formal pipeline program. I really wish that I had, and I wish that that was available. But I did take advantage of my school's I'm calling it a prep program for lack of better words, but a 2-week intensive before school started, because similarly, I was unfamiliar with the institution of law, and I was first generation, and, you know, concepts that were fairly simple, I didn't understand. Like, what is fact stacking? What are you talking about? In my culture, we don't repeat things 50 million times. And so I said it, and I said it once, you know, why do I have to keep saying it? So for small things like that, it also allowed me to connect and begin building informal supports. And so connecting with affinity groups, that was really important for me, not just for the emotional, social kind of support when you are dealing with overt and covert forms of racism and differences in terms of disability, to know that there are others who are going through it, to be able to figure out how we were going to address that and to support each other. So it was my peers who were able to say, well, this is what the professor's looking for. This is how they want them to say it. Let's practice together. Let's study together in a competitive environment. It was also receiving support from the very few professors of color at my at my college, such as Professor Johnson. And one of the things that really stood out for me, I remember as a 1L feeling like nobody really cared about my existence there. And in some ways, the environment tended to be hostile. And it was her just walking in the halls and not just saying hi, but saying, "How are you doing?" And I'll never forget that moment of just saying, wow, someone sees me. That was huge. And then finally, it was doing my research to read the handbook, to understand the ADA, to figure out, where do I go within the broader university or the school to get accommodations, to get resources. And so I received a lot of accommodations, everything from testing accommodations to classroom accommodations, being open about it so that I heard from other students who had different backgrounds, what they were receiving and what they were doing to succeed. And then able to say, wait a minute, if they have that, how can I advocate for that myself? And so I think it was a mix of formal supports and informal supports that really dictated my success in law school.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you both. In the interest of time, we are going to move on, but you ladies gave us a lot to chew on and a lot to think about and provided great insight. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is the Honorable Jeanette Ogden, who is a New York State Supreme Court Justice and a member of the New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division, 4th Department's Character and Fitness Committee. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Judge Ogden.
Good afternoon. Although the program has been highlighting ways to get into law school, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk to you about the character and fitness process, which is something that occurs after you have completed law school and you are preparing for the admission to practice law within the state of New York. So before you can practice law in any jurisdiction, you have to go through a state's admission process, including the character and fitness process. That's because applicants for admission to the bar have to show that they possess the personal qualities required to practice law and that they have the necessary character to justify the trust and confidence that the public, the legal system, and their clients will be placing in them. In New York, attorneys are admitted to practice by one of the 4 appellate divisions. Each appellate division is responsible for evaluating the character and fitness of candidates for admission who have been certified by the New York State Board of Law Examiners. Candidates must make sure that they're filing their application in the right judicial department. And that is the department where the New York Board of Law Examiners has certified the candidate. Here in Western New York, we're in the 4th department, and that's comprised of 22 counties within 3 judicial districts, the 5th, the 7th, and the 8th. And there's a committee on character and fitness in each of the 3 judicial districts within the 4th department. A candidate for admission to the bar, whether seeking admission after taking the bar exam and the MPRE or the multi-state professional responsibility exam, or whether they're seeking admission on motion from a reciprocal jurisdiction, must be certified by the Character and Fitness Committee. Committee members interview the applications and then they interview the applicants individually. Or sometimes, such as now when COVID was in existence, the chair may conduct the interview or we may conduct them virtually. The application must be approved by a quorum of not less than 5 members. Thereafter, the chair certifies on behalf of the committee that the applicant possesses the requisite character and fitness. If the application is not approved, there's a process for review of the committee's recommendation, and sometimes the committee and panel subcommittees to conduct hearings. Meeting The character and fitness requirements begins with understanding the application for admission to practice law as an attorney in the state of New York. And a copy of that application is included with the registration materials, and you can look at it at your leisure. The character and fitness application is the ultimate background check to make sure that an applicant is morally fit to practice law. So if you intend to pursue a career in law, consider whether there is anything in your past or present that brings your character into question. And if so, consider how to rehabilitate that issue immediately. So I'm going to suggest some tips to get you through the character and fitness process. First, choose your supporters carefully. As part of the application, candidates are required to submit affidavits attesting to their good moral character. Now, if you look carefully at the application, the person who signs the application or who signs as the affiant on your behalf has to be someone that you've known for 2 years, and they can't be associated with your present employer. They can't be related to you by blood or marriage. They can't be another applicant to the bar at the same time, and they can't be a staff member or a professor at the law school that you attended. So besides meeting these criteria, simply make sure that the affiant has a clean record. Next, candor is critical. Honesty is not just the best policy, it's the only policy when it comes to answering questions about your character and fitness on that application. So employ the utmost candor on all applications and the materials that you have to submit in support of the application. The application is going to require you to disclose criminal and/or civil violations if you have any. And if you do, disclose that information accurately and completely. And when in doubt about whether you have to disclose a particular incident, it's best to err on the side of over-disclosure. Inaccurate representation on the application could delay or even prevent bar admission. And if you're unsure of dates, obtain a criminal record printout from your local police department. You may be required to produce a certificate of disposition. If sometime in your life you received what's called an ACD, or a case that was adjourned in contemplation of dismissal, don't think that because your lawyer told you the case would be dismissed and sealed that the committee won't know. So simply disclose that fact. If you were a juvenile with a teen adjudication of a juvenile delinquent or a juvenile offender, disclose that fact. If you have speeding or other traffic violations, disclose them. And if you're not sure when you got that speeding ticket, obtain a driver's abstract from the Department of Motor Vehicles and enter the information from there. Now, if you were a party in a civil suit, disclose it. If you were a witness, you have to disclose that fact. You have to disclose exact addresses where you live, and you have to disclose employment history, including any disciplinary action taken against you. You should portray yourself honestly in all application materials, such as your resume. Don't overstate or mischaracterize your job experience. Don't exaggerate or misstate your academic honors. Present yourself truthfully and accurately in every response. And be consistent. Information included on your law school application should be the same in many instances that's included on your application for bar admission. So simply go back and look at it. Show active rehabilitative steps that you have taken if you do have a criminal record. Tell people about the things you did for community service. Give information that shows that you demonstrate remorse, responsibility, and rehabilitation. Most of all, show that you've taken decisive action to course correct and distance yourself from prior misconduct. And maintain financial responsibility and correct any past mistakes. The committee might ask for a credit report or income tax return and records relating to any lawsuits and failures to live up to financial obligations of any kind. Be prepared to explain failures to pay child support, issuances of bad checks, money judgments, and unpaid parking tickets. And if you have any of these issues, address them as soon as possible. Don't wait until the time that you're graduating and preparing to complete the application. And no matter how your circumstances may have unfolded, the worst thing that you can do is nothing. So if you have debt, simply set up a payment plan, even if you don't have the money to pay for it. Set the plan up and explain your situation. And then project a positive, appropriate image on social media. And hopefully you've already given some thought to your social media image. But objectively assess how you portray yourself on all platforms. Your social media behavior and your presence should not raise any questions or concerns about your character, your integrity, your professionalism, or your overall fitness to join the community of legal professionals. And to the extent that there are any red flags, such as an ill-advised photograph or misguided comment, clean up your image now. Don't wait. And give yourself time. The character and fitness process can be extensive, so give yourself enough time to gather the required information. Now, with respect to alcohol and other drug abuse, addiction, and mental health, neither receiving treatment for alcoholism, drug addiction, or mental health concerns, nor the status of being a recovering alcoholic or a recovering addict are grounds for denial of admission to the bar. In New York, the focus of such inquiry is on whether chemical abuse or addiction or mental health condition impairs the applicant's current ability to practice law. And while honesty in disclosing past conduct like arrest or convictions is essential, disclosure of past treatment is not required. No questions are asked about past treatment. But if someone is experiencing drug, alcohol, or other addiction or mental health issues, I recommend that they address those issues as soon as possible, regardless of when the student plans to seek bar admission, because you do that for yourself. And remember, applications for admission to the bar are also require proof of compliance with the 50-hour pro bono service and the skills, competency, and professional values bar admission requirement. And I am going to basically conclude at this point and indicate that the ability to practice law and be a member of our profession is a very honorable one. And diversity is absolutely essential to the concept of justice in the law. And so right now, for all of those that are in law school, I am going to welcome you right now to the legal profession, but be prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Ogden. Thank you for that insightful information and for encouraging students to know what to look for in terms of getting ready for admission to the profession. And then also that information is valuable to those in the legal community who mentor students to tell them to get a head start on looking at all of those things. So that was very helpful for us. And so our final presenter, I know we are getting close to the top of the hour, but please stay on if you're able to. Our final presenter is Florence Kerner, Esquire. She is the Executive Director of the Bar Preparation and Licensing Programs at the City University of New York. So without further ado, Ms. Kerner.
Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me to be here today. I'm just going to share my screen and just make a few very brief remarks in spite of the length of my my PowerPoint. I'm going to just try to hit some of the key points. First of all, at the City University of New York, I wanted to indicate who our wonderful students are, and our 2020 entering class, as you can see here, was 53% Black, Indigenous students of color, 32% first generation college students. I want to hit just a couple of key points. First of all, we've been talking today about improving access to the profession, mostly about the steps of improving access to law school. But obviously what we need to make sure that we do is support students not only before to get them to law school, but during and after. And that's what we endeavor to do at CUNY. You know, to be quite frank, we've had wonderful successes and then we've had some setbacks, but we are continuing to endeavor to try to improve our programs. One main point is that throughout law school, we need to provide individualized academic and other support to our students. And we do have a very robust skills program. It actually begins prior to law school with the Summer Law Institute and continues throughout the 3 years or 4 years, because we have a part-time program as well, and working with students both on an integrated basis with faculty and also individually. Sorry about that. I'm going a little too fast. I want to focus particularly on our bar support programs, though, really briefly again. So we think we have a robust bar support program at CUNY. We're proud of it, but again, we're continually trying to innovate and improve. And so in addition to having some required bar electives, our capstone course is a 6-credit course that students take obviously prior to graduation. It involves selected doctrinal review, skills practice, intense skills practice in terms of bar skills, every aspect of bar work that students will have to do, study skills, time management skills, stress management skills. And we try, the watchword of the course is reflection in hopes of developing a growth mindset. We want all our students to know that although bar prep is overwhelming, that it is something that they can do. Focusing on another program that we're very proud of and frankly we believe has been very successful, and we receive excellent reviews from our participants on, is our Bar Mentor program. Once our students graduate, we pair them with an individual mentor. These are faculty members and also alums. We train the mentors. We create a substantive mentoring program where the students or the graduates at that point meet for 8 weeks, once a week, with their bar mentor and work through a bar essay. And get immediate feedback on not only result, but most importantly on process, and support in every other area of bar prep. For example, time management, stress management, and any bar skills that the student wishes to discuss. This program is almost all of our graduates participate in this program. We get, I would say, about a 95% participation rate. And even students who don't make it on the first time want to come back and participate in the program again. And we never let go. We work with our retakers no matter how many times they need to take the bar. And these are just some testimonials, which I'll breeze through because we don't have time. But I wanted to just say that for us, one of the thrills is that even the folks who, need to go through the process again, trust us enough and trust the program enough to participate a second time, and this is some of their testimonials. In the minute that I have left, I just want to echo some of what Natalia mentioned. One of the major issues that our students face, so many of our students face, has to do with finance. And our students, for the most part, not only don't have a safety net, but in many cases, our students are the safety net for other members of their family. The challenges that they face throughout the period, and I'm particularly focused on the bar prep period, are great. We offer a bar grant program at CUNY. We raise money to provide scholarships based on need to cover not only the cost of registering and purchasing a bar prep program, but for the cost to cover as much as possible living expenses during that 2 months of bar study. Our goal is to enable our students to avoid working during the bar study period or to reduce the number of hours that they work. We don't have enough resources to make that possible entirely, but we think that's one of the most important programs that we offer. So I would just, again, we get, obviously fantastic feedback on that, but again, it isn't enough. We do what we can with the money that we raise. And I just wanted to leave, not on a negative note, but just to say, for many students, and certainly many of our students at CUNY, anything unforeseen just exacerbates the disparity and the precariousness of their situations, right? So last summer, going through the pandemic and other social challenges and political issues that we all lived through, we were able to survey our students and then our mentors. We got a great response from our mentors. So we kind of using this data to show that 56% of the students that were participating in the Bar Mentor program, which is basically all of our students, faced financial or employment struggles during the period of bar prep, and 35% housing challenges, and et cetera, right? So I think to provide support for students, direct financial support, or to provide academic or other support for students during law school, obviously the law schools additionally, that is the need for funding is obvious. So again, don't want to leave on a negative because we have lots of great programs and we're very proud of them, but we're focused on meeting the continuing challenges as best we can. So I'm going to stop now because I know that we are out of time. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Florence. So as we can all see, we are a little bit over time, but what we will do is those of our panelists, if you have to leave, obviously, we won't hold you captive. To be respectful of time, though, I will limit the Q&A session to about 10 minutes. And participants, if you have something that you want to put in the chat, please utilize it. What I'm going to do is I'll first go through some of those that have been answered that were asked a lot for the benefit, just for the benefit of those who may not be able to use the Q&A feature. So there's one question that multiple people asked that I wanted to address. And it's, are there pipeline programs for students who have an undergraduate degree but aren't current college students who come from underrepresented backgrounds? So Professor Chu, she had to leave, but she stated that her program did have an adult learner program in 2020, and there were people from their mid-20s through the mid-50s who participated in that program. It is on a hiatus for 2021, but her hope is that others will get back into that space. And then I also wanted to open up that question for any of my colleagues who may know of any programs for people who are not, people who don't go straight from undergrad to law school. Okay, hearing nothing, I will go ahead and move right along and open the floor to anyone who's not able to utilize the Q&A feature but wants to raise their hand and ask a question. And I'm not sure if I can see those who have their hands raised, so if IT could help me out in unmuting anyone they see with a hand raised, that would be helpful.
I'm looking, no one's raised their hand right now.
Okay.
Yeah, no one raising it.
No problem. There's another question that was answered in the chat that I wanted to address. So someone asked, for all of the programs that we heard about today, are applications still open? Professor Chu answered for her program, their period closed for 2021. I will answer for UB's Discover Law program. Our application is closed. The deadline was April 14th. And Professor Velez, would you mind letting us know if either of the Pipeline to Justice or LEO programs are still open?
So the Pipeline to Justice program is open. It's usually, again, there's part of the program that students apply and then are denied. And so applications started in March, and that extends until July 15th or 2 weeks after you receive a denial letter and an invitation to apply, or for those who apply directly. For New York LEO, it's in another sort of limbo position because of the pandemic. And so I don't think they're offering the program this. And so I think there's advocacy to again, renew that program. So yeah, so Pipeline, yes, LEO, no.
Thank you for that response. And going through the open questions in the chat, yes, you all will, this webinar will be posted. It is being recorded and it will be available in the link I sent earlier. I believe Professor Chu is gone, so she can't answer this question. This looks like a comment from one of our participants who mentioned perhaps becoming a paralegal as a pathway into the world of law. And I'm not sure if any of our panelists have thoughts or want to comment and react to that. If you've had any students who have gone through that path and how they were able to navigate becoming first a paralegal and then perhaps entering into law school.
This is Natalie Gomez Velez. We have some students in our evening program who I know their day job is as a paralegal or in a related field. And so for those students, and I do think that another kind of pipeline, another opening to improve diversity has been having an evening program where students who are unable to just not work for 3 years are able to go to law school. And I don't know the actual numbers, but there are several students whose day job is as a paralegal or in other legal support jobs.
Thank you, Professor Gomez Velez. Any other reactions to that comment? I do want to note, I know that Hilbert College does have a great paralegal program. And I think the question or the commenter is right in that it is a good way to see if you even like the legal profession. I would say if you do know that you want to be a lawyer and that is what you want, it may make sense just to go straight to law school because that is something you'll have to do anyway. So if you are sold on becoming a lawyer, I would say stick with the undergraduate major that you want, stick with the schooling that you want to do, and then go to law school. Okay, let's take a look at some of these other questions. One participant asked if there are any scholarships for disadvantaged students for law schools that we could share. I'll start with my response and then go to my colleagues on the panel. What I would do and what I recommend is always individually asking law schools what scholarships they offer. And that looks like going to law schools' websites and seeing what scholarships they offer. And then also perhaps scheduling a meeting or a law school walkthrough with the admissions office and actually meeting those who work in the admissions office, because those folks also provide very helpful insight on what scholarships are available. I do also recommend, again, going to admissions web pages, but also if a school does have a diversity, equity, and inclusion webpage, like UB School of Law does, they often list scholarship opportunities there. And I will stop there and let my colleagues chime in as well.
I agree with all of that. Go to the law school websites. I would just add also lsac.org, like some of the clearinghouses doing a search for scholarships through those portals as well can be helpful to find other scholarships.
Okay, we have another question. Can taking a paralegal course or program provide an introduction to law school courses? So I'll start by saying I think it depends on the paralegal program. And I'll be honest, I'm not too familiar with them, so I don't want to provide any false information. But I think to answer that question, you would have to look at the paralegal program you're interested in and also have an understanding on what happens in law school. So your first year, you take what we call doctrinal courses, which are the torts, constitutional law, criminal law, so those are the doctrinal courses, which also includes constitutional law. And then you also have to take legal research and writing. So what you want to think about is the paralegal program that you are doing reflective of what happens in a first year of law school? And since I'm not involved in paralegal programs, I can't speak too much on what they offer, but that's how I would look at it if you are interested in becoming a paralegal, but then also have an interest in becoming an attorney. Any other reactions to that? Our next question is, are there mentorships programs during and after law school for disadvantaged students to acclimate to the law school environment, and then also after graduation to learn how to become a successful lawyer? And since I've been talking so much, I will hand that off to one of my colleagues who wants to respond.
This is Natalie Gomez Velez. I can't undo my video, so I'm just talking from. There are mentoring programs. I think it's another thing where you want to look to the law schools. And the other place that I would suggest for law students is bar associations as well. I know that a number of affinity bar associations have mentoring programs. There may be centers and programs within law schools that have mentoring programs. And there really is a community of lawyers interested in doing that. So I would look to those places, law schools themselves, but also various bar associations that do that.
Thank you, Professor. So our next question is, what is the CLE code? So this is not a CLE program. So we do not have a code for this program. So that is our last question in the Q&A feature. I'm just going to quickly run through the chat to make sure I haven't missed anything. It doesn't look like I have. So I think that is it for our questions from our audience participants. So at this time, I just want to again thank our co-hosts for putting on this program with the UB School of Law. So the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission, the City University of New York School of Law, St. John's University School of Law, and Syracuse University College of Law. Thank you all so much. And also thank you to our participants who took the time to talk with us about this important topic. And that will be all for this afternoon.